Well, good day to you. It is November the 3rd. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. My name is Gary Willing. I want to welcome you to Search for Signs if you're new, and welcome you back if you've been here before. Now, if you want to know more about this information, investigate it for yourself. Look into it. See if there's any truth to it, that kind of thing. You can do it however you want to do it, but I have included links in the description portion of these videos that take you to websites that give you really good background information about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, about his priorities even, and also about the many miracle signs that have been going on and evidence that they're still going on and that kind of thing. So they're there in those websites. Just, investigate it for yourself, and then you can see if there's anything to this. So that's why I put them in there for you. Now, if you want to join the discussion, you're welcome to do that too. People post comments all the time. I love comments because I address them from time to time if they're appropriate. I try to answer every single question that's come my way. And you can post your question in the comments section, or you can email me at searchforsigns@mail.com. Now, I want to thank Ali Muhammad, Thomas Lynch, Lenny Anclora, Cynthia Jaworski, Mark Hill, Maitreya, Ricardo Pels-Wesoli, Gavin Adams, and James Wambiti. You guys all commented, and gal, in the case of Cynthia Jaworski. And if it wasn't for you, I'd had nothing to say in this video, so I really do appreciate it. But Ali Muhammad commented and said, there is no Maitreya, there is no second coming of Jesus, there is no Mahdi, there is no Savior. We, the mankind, are responsible for our actions toward ourselves and the planet. We are the only savior of ourselves. So, first, thank you for the comment. Second, I am not entirely in disagreement with what you have to say. You do not have to believe what I believe and who and what I believe Maitreya is in order for this information to be useful to you. Now, the problem is, if you don't listen to these videos all the way through, perhaps, or you just read a title, but it's far better to take even a step further and just investigate this information for yourself by checking out some of these websites, like the Share International site, for instance. You will see that if you listen to the videos that I put up, I in never way have ever said that Maitreya or any savior type will come and save humanity and we don't have to do anything. And we're not responsible for our actions. Quite the opposite. I'll even take it a step further and say that Benjamin Creme, who was the initiator of this information, never said anything like that. He, too, said that humanity needs to do it, And I do think that Maitreya would say the same thing. And I don't put words in Maitreya's mouth. He's said things like this. He said, one way he put it was, the problems of the world are real but solvable. Man must act and implement his will. It has nothing to do with a savior type coming in and saving us, and we don't have to do anything. I don't even believe our world leaders can save us, and we vote in new people, then everything's going to be fine and stuff, which is what we do. It's all complacency. All the problems that are facing humanity that we still haven't solved are there because humanity is complacent. That's it. We see ourselves separate from one another. Nations see themselves separate from one another. Therefore, we compete. We distrust one another. We try to underhand one another. We manipulate. We, abuse other people and those kind of things, in all sorts of ways. And the truth of the matter is that we are one. Now, Maitreya says that truth sits within the hearts of every single person without exception. Even somebody who does not manifest or exhibit any qualities of unity or oneness or compassion or even consideration. They too have within their hearts, according to Maitreya, that longing for oneness and unity. Now, the problems that you're obviously referring to, I think when we finally solve those problems, which I do believe that we eventually will, we will realize as a humanity that those problems were our greatest teacher, because we realized once and for all the truth that we are one. Where Maitreya fits into this is he is speaking to that truth within the hearts of every one of us while he's on TV or in any media form, whether it's a newspaper, radio, or the internet, or a television. Whatever he's doing, whenever he's speaking to people, whether it's, like I said, just an individual or whatever, he's waking up that truth that we are one within that heart. Now, for some, it might take a lot longer than others to finally have that wake up within their heart and realize, oh my gosh, we are one family. But more and more people are starting to wake up to the truth that we are one, starting to realize that we are damaging the environment, that we are harming each other, that we do live in an unjust world, and they're trying their best to solve that problem. Now, Maitreya's priority is that we must bring about peace. We have to bring about peace first. He can't do it for us. We as a humanity have to do it. The only way to bring about peace, according to Maitreya, is to institute the principle of sharing. He says, without sharing, there will be no justice. Without justice, there will be no peace. And without peace, there will be no future. So people today are trying to solve the environmental problem without addressing the need for peace and the need for nations to trust one another. They're trying to bring about justice and economic stability when the fact that that's what's causing it is a lack of justice. So the only thing that he says will bring about justice is for us to institute the principle of sharing. Nations have to share the resources with each other. That's why it's the first and most important thing that humanity must do. But we have to do it together. So if you just research this information, I think you and whoever else has this initial reaction would see that nobody here is saying that a savior type is coming to save humanity. We don't have to do anything. So, but I do thank you for your comment, Ali Muhammad, and keep the comments coming because they are insightful. Appreciate it. Now I'm going to switch gears and try to answer a question. James Wambidi. Mr. Gary, I believe there is only one genuine, authentic Maitreya. Is that the same Maitreya who has written a comment on this page? So, James, I have to say this. I was expecting this question to come up at some point, so I guess it's time for me to address it now. I don't get a lot of people who comment or ask questions on my page, so I do read every single comment that comes my way, and for me, or to my mind, the Maitreya the one who I'm talking about, the world teacher for all humanity, the one awaited by all the world's religions, the Lord of Love, the Avatar of Peace, all whatever name you want to call him, right, has not commented on this channel, and I doubt he ever will. This channel has gone from me talking about my own personal experiences with Maitreya, a little bit about the priorities of Maitreya, to becoming a discussion group about the masters, about Maitreya, about his priorities. Hopefully, for some, quelling the fear and concern that they might have about, and misunderstanding that they have about Maitreya in the same time. But that's all this is. So it's not really for him to comment on this channel. And the gentleman who goes by Maitreya, who comments, has been nothing but kind and respectful in his comments. He does believe that he is Maitreya because he said it, and that's his right. He can believe whatever he wants to believe about himself. I believe I have a full head of hair until I look in the mirror. But I walk around the world and walk around my neighborhood thinking that I have the best head of hair, and that I'm just that confident. And then I look in the mirror, I'm like, nope, I'm bald. So, but, Maitreya is just a name. Maitreya himself has said, because people were in the Asian community of London were even looking to him as maybe possibly being the Imam Mahdi. And they asked him, are you the Imam Mahdi? So rather than just coming out and saying, yes, I am, he said it like this, according to what Benjamin Creme said. He said, well, if I'm the Imam Mahdi for the Muslims, then what about the Christ for the Christians? What about them? Who's for them? He goes, these are just names. Names that humanity came up with. We came up with this. Unfortunately, they create nothing but confusion within the minds of people because of the ideologies that those names are the center of, so the Christ for the Christians, Imam Mahdi for the Muslims, that kind of thing. So they create confusion because for the Christians, for instance, they're expecting Jesus to come back. They don't think that the Muslims' teacher is anything. If anything, he's the Antichrist, for instance, or whatever. Or, but they might not even know that they're awaiting another teacher, just like they're awaiting a teacher. But none of them realize that it's the same individual. And that's the esoteric truth about who and what the teacher is. Maitreya just prefers to be known as the teacher. He said that creates the least amount of confusion, if any, but that's exactly who and what he is. It's just a teacher, but a teacher in the broadest sense, My third grade teacher, my piano teacher, my high school, teacher, my college professor, whatever, could make the same claim of being a teacher, just as he can make the same claim of being a teacher. But he's a teacher in the broadest sense. He's not a teacher in a specified area. So that's the difference. Now, Maitreya will not claim to be Maitreya, will not use the name Maitreya, will not say he's Maitreya, will not insinuate that he is Maitreya until after that he declares himself on the day of declaration. And it's been said that on that day is when he will finally announce to the world who and what he is. Now, up until that point, he is just using an ordinary Middle Eastern name, something to the equivalent of John Smith, being introduced as an ordinary person. But he's doing it for probably several reasons. One, to not infringe humanity's free will, but he says it's so that each and every one of us, when we hear him speak, when he gives his advice to humanity, that we can sit in simple honesty on our couch or wherever listening to him speak, and truly be able to honestly say to ourselves, I agree with this and we should do what he's saying or not, and feel free to be able to make that choice and not feel obligated to say yes or no based on who and what we know him to be. So that's why he's not claiming himself to be Maitreya at this point in time. Now, as more and more people recognize him for Maitreya, we won't know for sure until he declares himself. We might be able to suspect it, and people have thrown out names in the past, like Raj Patal and some other names and so forth, but they aren't Maitreya. He's been very quiet, in his being known as or being suspected to be Maitreya. He's really still under the radar, I think, for most people. Now, on the day of declaration, this will be a day that, as the way I see it, will be the first and only time that the world really stood still. I don't think the world's going to stop spinning. That's not what I mean. That would be disastrous. But I think in terms of the activity and the life of humanity at that day, it will come to a screeching halt. There will be no commerce. There will be no people, hustling and bustling about. There may be a few, but for the most part, it will be a day that we all stand together as one humanity and listen to him speak, because we will actually have asked him to speak to us at that point. There'll be enough buzz about who and what Maitreya is and maybe could be that we are going to want to hear him speak and hear him what he has to say. On this day, he will speak to humanity directly, and we will not hear him speak out loud. So your TV could be turned up to 35 or 40, and there'll be nothing going through your speakers. You'll all hear it in your head. If you're listening to it on your phone, it won't come through your headphones or whatever. You'll hear what he's saying inwardly in your own head. Wherever you are in the world, you'll hear it above the age of 14, even if you're not standing in front of a media device like a computer or a television or something. Now, the language that we hear it in will be our own native language. So whatever language you're most comfortable with in your mind, that's how you're going to hear it. So there's no language barrier. Now, it's also been said that he will give us a set of visions where we've come from as a humanity. We'll see what it was like before we've taken this huge tumble into the morass and the danger of possibly destroying the world as we are today. And he'll also give us a future, from what I understand, 2 futures to look at. We'll see it from his perspective, what it's like to see our world, everything that we've known, all the history that we've come to learn, and all the people who have come before us, and the knowledge about them, and the teachings that they've given us, and so forth down throughout the ages. All the art, all the family, all the friends. I mean, our entire world, we will see what it feels like to lose that and see it destroyed, us destroying it, if we do not accept the principle of sharing and bring about peace. That's what's going to happen. That's the future for us. We will die. The whole world will be ended at that point. We will feel what it feels like to lose all that. Now, within Maitreya's heart also, and what he can see in the future, is the future in which we accept the principle of sharing. What that would be like. And we'll feel at that moment the same thing that Maitreya feels. Humanity starting to come together as one, starting to solve the problems of the world, starting to trust one another more, eventually starting to bring about goodwill amongst nations, amongst groups of people and individuals, and then eventually true manifested love on this planet. We'll feel it just as he sees it and he feels it on that day. And then we can make a choice for ourselves. Do we want a future where we all die and our only planetary home will be gone forever? Or do we want a future far more glorious than we can ever possibly imagine, because we would come together as one humanity. Now, Maitreya himself also said on that day that his love will embrace all of humanity. We'll feel it even physically. And then there will be millions upon millions upon millions of spontaneous cures. People who have had either were born with a incurable disease or whatever, all of a sudden healed. And as Benjamin Creme used to always say, that those three reasons will be the reasons that we know that that man, and only that man, is the world teacher Maitreya. But up until that point, we can only guess. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that clears up some of the misunderstanding and stuff like that. But, Maitreya, like I said, Maitreya is just a name too. There are other people who go by the name Maitreya. I have 2 coworkers whose name is Jesus. And does that mean that that's the Jesus that everybody's waiting to come back? I do joke around when people, when I work with them, I say, "Have you found Jesus?" Oh, he's right there. And they've heard that one before. But anyway, now I'm going to switch on to a comment that sparked some discussion. And it's coming from Gavin Adams. Now, he had a few comments. I will leave the other 2 up so you can read it, but I want to address this one. This one's important. Mark 13:6, quote, "For many come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many," unquote. That is a direct quote from the Bible. And it might come as some shock to some people, but I could not have said it better myself. Now, I know that sounds tremendously arrogant to say, especially in terms of trying to quote the Bible, but I'm sure he's saying this thinking that, he's talking about Maitreya's going around claiming to be the Christ. Well, I just said, in addressing the last question, he's not using that name. These are just names that we came up with, the Christ. It's the ideology around that creates the confusion, right? Now, this could be looked at a few different ways, more than a couple, but a few different ways. One is there are people who claim to be the Christ and deceive many people, claim to be Jesus come back, and some of them have commented on my channel. Some of them have been very combative with me, about them being Maitreya or being Jesus, or one even thought that they were God himself, So, but in some cases, like David Koresh and some of these other people who are just very charismatic, they do deceive many people. So that is, I can see where that's coming from that perspective. The other perspective, which I think is a little trickier to see, especially when it comes to people in the non-religious field, okay? But religious pastors, these mega, televangelists with these mega churches and so forth, have very much enriched themselves financially, even politically in some cases, in terms of politicians and so forth, by using the name Jesus. The early churches did the exact same thing. They enriched themselves beyond measure by deceiving people, by saying, if you don't come to us, give us your devotion, give us your money, you will go to hell. And the people believed it, and it stuck, and then it became the way things are, and then it became the quote unquote truth. But it's all ideology. It's all, and as Krishnamurti once said, any ideology has within it an oppressor and the oppressed. I think that's how he put it, something to that effect, and a lack of freedom. You create this lack of freedom with this ideology and so forth. But, so that's another way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it, too, is looking at the political landscape here in the United States right now. The Republicans have been very good about framing this narrative that they are the party of Jesus. The Democrats don't do that. So they don't have this emotional swell underneath them the same way that the Republicans do. It's a crime what's going on in the United States especially. I'm sure it's happening in other countries too because it works. But it is ingraining people and it's forcing them into their fold to where they will not deviate at all from the fold because they see it as this is their religion, this is their God speaking through their political leaders. Then you have the enemy. And then now they're framing the enemies as being the exact opposite of they're not even, the same Americans with different political views. They're the enemy now. And all this, and what's happening now is because of that type of, the way that they're doing things, the way that they're trying to inculcate within their followers this false belief, this illusion that they are God inspired. Now they can do whatever they can do to these other people. And the reason why they're doing it is because it's worked. It's worked for the churches for centuries. They had the exact same hold over their people. But if you look at people like Donald Trump who are using this, I think Donald Trump knows that he's lying to them. And yet he does it anyway to enrich himself financially, because he's definitely raised hundreds of millions of dollars because of this falsehood and this lie that he is now God inspired and God's guiding his every move and so forth like this. Even though if you look at the guy's life, it's nowhere near anything to the life of someone following Christ and so forth. I'm not judging the man, but I'm just saying this is where we're at right now. Then there are other people, I think, like George W. Bush, who probably honestly believed that he was being inspired by God. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene are dumb enough to think that they're inspired by God in those kind of ways. And people believe them, But look at the end result of what they're doing. Let's take George W. Bush. He thought that God was inspiring him to attack Iraq, attack Afghanistan, create this war on terrorism, to save the United States in that way. What was the end result? Did it bring about more peace? Did it bring about justice? Did it make America safer? I mean, these are the things that they all were talking about back in 2001 and 2002. No, it was a very expensive war. It created more debt for this country, which is just an albatross around the neck of this country. And yet, in these other countries that we attacked, hundreds of, thousands, maybe even millions of people, innocent people, have died. And all the suffering that their life, of all those people who've survived, their family members, their friends who are now gone because we illegally attacked them, they have to live with the pain and the loss of losing their loved ones. It's destroyed these countries, but yet they did it under this illusion that Jesus was telling them to do this. So that, I think, that saying and that statement in the Bible couldn't be truer. And you just have to look at what Jesus also said. A tree is known by its fruit. What is the fruit of the tree of somebody like Donald Trump? What has he done? Nothing but create more division, more hate, more violence, and more uncertainty about life because of lying about this and then turning around and telling a different lie about that and spinning this lie and that and the other. And it's just this toxic environment because of it. There's no way that is God inspired to be able to do that, to have that happen. But same thing with George W. Bush. Had he been truly inspired by God to do what he did, it would have brought about peace in the Middle East. It would have made the United States safer. It would have been a much better situation now. But it isn't. We're worse off now than we were in 2000. So that's, I think, really where you need to come from. But, in terms of Maitreya, I don't think he'll really ever say he's the Christ. I think he'll say that those are names that maybe he's looked at as. When I say he's the Christ, I don't say it in terms of any kind of belief. I'm saying it in terms of who and what he's done. He literally embodies the Christ principle of God. Esoterically, he is the Christ, but he doesn't go around saying he's the Christ. He just prefers to be known as a teacher, but a teacher in the broadest sense, not like I said, not in a specialized area like so many other teachers would be. But the other thing too, in terms of trying to reference this to Maitreya, is Maitreya would not tell you to believe what he believes, to not follow him even. So where's the deception? He would just present his teaching and you look at it, and if you want it, you great. If you don't, you don't. But a teacher should be judged by their teaching, right? Any teacher, doesn't matter who it is. If their teachings produce good results, then they're a good teacher. If they produce negative or toxic results, then they're probably not a very good teacher. or their policies or their teaching isn't on point, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. So judge Maitreya when you see him on TV. Judge him for what he's saying. And if what he's saying, if we apply it and if it works. It couldn't be simpler, really, to look at. I think people get too caught up in their ideology of things. But anyway, thank you very much for the comment nonetheless. Now, lastly, kind of along the same lines, Lenny and Kalota, I like your channel, Gary, because you have such a positive attitude and are so willing, which is my last name, to engage with your audience. If you don't mind me asking, what makes you believe in what Benjamin Creme said more than what other people have spoken with masters? For example, Edgar Cayce, he spoke with lots of different entities. And the entities never said that the Christ had already returned to earth and is just waiting for the right time to reveal himself. I am just curious why you believe what Benjamin Creme said so much. So, as always, thank you for the question. I would say, first and foremost, it's not a matter of belief. So, in one way, by saying that, you do not have to believe what I believe. Okay? So you do not have to believe what I'm saying about Maitreya. I'm just throwing this out there and talking about it. You do not have to believe what Benjamin Creme said. It is my hope, though, by talking about this information, that you and others will start to see maybe possibly that there is hope, right? That we can do something and that you will do something to help. That's my hope. In terms of the belief aspect of it and changing your belief from this person to believing more what Benjamin Creme, I don't care about that at all, really, to be honest with you. I know that's not what you're saying, but I just wanted to clarify that. I did not initially believe Benjamin Creme when I read his book. I was totally against what he was saying. I put up my hands and, this is garbage. Now, I didn't make great strides to go against it. I just didn't see it as true for myself at that time. And then I did what I always encourage people. I started reading more about it. I started looking into it. And then I started seeing, maybe there is something to this. And then I started kind of thinking more and more about it. And then I started reading more about it. And then I started asking myself questions and trying to answer those questions and doing it that way. The one thing that Benjamin Creme did that got me over some of that initial reaction was he even himself said the same thing that I just said. It doesn't matter what you believe. You believe whatever you want to believe. He is just saying this to you for you to look at and for you to think about. After that, it's up to you. And I love that freedom aspect of it. I love the fact that I didn't have to believe something or change my belief in something like that. But it took me years of going back and forth before I finally said, okay, yeah, I think there's something to this. Now, the other thing, too, is I've had experiences with Maitreya that have really solidified in my mind the reality of what he's saying. But I don't think that necessarily, everything that I believe or think about in terms of this information is 100% accurate. I've probably spun some things my way that maybe aren't necessarily true. And then in the future, they might look different than what I'm saying to some degree, right? Now, the information itself about Maitreya and everything, I do believe 100% because based on my own personal experiences too, not just based on what Benjamin Creme said. And I didn't agree with Benjamin Creme 100% of the time. Even when I was with him personally, I didn't agree with everything he said. And he sure as hell didn't agree with everything that I said. He made it more known that he didn't agree with what I said than when I didn't agree with actually what he said. But, a lot of things that he said to me initially I didn't, like or wasn't comfortable for me perhaps. But over time, when I look back at getting farther and farther away from the time that he said it to me and my reactions, and I started looking back and going, yeah, there's a lot to what he said, and I think he's right. Or he was not maybe necessarily right, but it was correct for him to say that, or that was true, or that was accurate about me specifically. Especially when it came to my intentions. He saw through all that. Like every time I tried to impress him, he really just slammed me right back down to the ground. Bam! And it hurt my feelings at the time. And I didn't agree with him at the time. But the more I look back, I was like, oh, that was his way of getting me to see that my intentions were wrong. I was trying to impress him. He didn't want me to impress him. You know what I'm saying? So that was just one example of it. But, if you look at, and I just try to answer it in the last, comment, but, you can believe Edgar Cayce if that's what you want. You can believe the Bible if that's what you want. I don't care. But if you read Edgar Cayce or Nostradamus, let's just talk about Nostradamus, because I know more about Nostradamus than I do about Edgar Cayce anyway. But by reading Edgar Cayce, does it make you a better person? Does it make you a more loving person? Does that make you, perhaps give you hope for the future? Or does it not, right? Reading Edgar Cayce, does it give you hope for the future? Does it make you a better and more loving person? And moment to moment, you start to look at yourself differently and apply things differently, and you're becoming a better person because of what you've learned from Edgar Cayce. If that does, then continue on doing that by all means, right? Now, I believe a teacher should be looked at and judged and critiqued on their teaching, not on how they look, not even on necessarily what they say and how they say it, but is their teaching beneficial? You know, if you go to a person who thinks they're the world's greatest, piano teacher, and after a year of you trying to do what they tell you to do, you still can't play the piano, then they're probably not a very good teacher. They might be a very good piano player, but they're not a very good teacher, now are they? You'd have to be able to apply what they did and what they've said to make it improve your life. And if it does, then they are a good teacher. So I would say it's also in the application of the information from Benjamin Creme. I tried doing transmission meditation. It changed my life. I've tried some of the other simple teachings that he talked about, some of the teachings from these masters and so forth that were written in his books, and I changed it and it changed my life. Then if you switch gears and you look at Maitreya, he's talked to me a few times, and I've listened to his teachings, and I applied them to myself, and it changed my life. I don't have to believe in who Maitreya is in order to know that this person, whoever he was, I believe it was Maitreya, but whoever he was, whatever he said, when I applied it, it worked. One of the things that he said that really just changed my life for the better is when he said, I never judge anyone on whether they're good or bad. I only notice the good things that they do. And I chewed on that for over a decade, trying to figure out exactly what that meant. And when I finally applied it to myself and the people in my life, it changed everything. People in my workplace that I did not want to be around, I thought they were just the worst people in the world, blah, 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 lazy, whatever it is, right? When I just tried what he said, and rather than just saying, okay, I'm not going to judge them at all, I'm just going to maybe look at one good thing that they did, it changed my attitude toward them. I was like, well, they're not so bad. At least they did this. And then I started thinking about another thing, and then I might have a critical thought. I'm like, well, yeah, they're getting it wrong this way, but at least they did this. And more, I started to practice that. And I'm not perfect at it by all means, but it's a start. It's just a start to loving somebody unconditionally. And it changed my relationship with them. Their relationship with me changed because of it. So, people get so caught up in ideologies and the belief in this person's right and that. Why does it have to be right or wrong on either of them? Just take what's true from either of them. And if it applies to your life and it works, let it work. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm sure there are truths that Edgar Cayce was saying in his things, it's like the Bible, there's truths in the Bible. I mention it all the time. It doesn't mean you have to believe and go 100% in whatever the Bible says literally and take it for this and that's it and there's nothing else. Why not? You know what I'm saying? But you can look at a few things and look at it and go, yes, I agree with that and I think that's true and I'm going to apply that to my life and have it work. If you just applied what you sow shall you reap and looked at that moment to moment and tried to live more harmlessly, you'd be a much better person than if you just believed in Jesus and didn't apply that to your life. So that's where I'm coming from. So I don't think that it's necessarily one or the other. I do think that there are people who claim to have messages from masters and are not receiving messages from masters. But then it's just a question of quality. What's the quality of it? It's like, it might sound good. It might feel good even. It might, come across as being really enlightened. But in the end, does it amount to anything? It would be the thing. It's all about the quality of things. It's all about, it goes back to what you sow shall you reap, or a tree is known by its fruit. You know what I mean? The teachings of Benjamin Creme's master, when I read those things and I look at it, it's so simple, so wise. There's a different quality to it than you would if you, from, let's say, somebody like Elizabeth Clare Prophet, who claimed to channel these masters, and all this master channeled her, was able to, you just listen, you read the different, it's just a totally different set of writing. and way of thinking and approach to things, but it's the quality of it. But there's not saying that everything that Elizabeth Clare Prophet said isn't true. There is a Master Maitreya, there is a Master Jesus, there is a Master Morya. But does that mean that she was married to him in her last life? I don't know. I don't think that to be true. But, I mean, it's just, that's what she believed, But it is what it is, you know what I mean? But you can take the truths from anything. It's just how much time do you have to go through all that stuff and look through it? To me, I'd rather just look at something that is perhaps a little bit, it's more efficient is another way of looking at it, you know what I mean? There's more to it. There's more truth there than there would be in let's say, somebody that's just claiming to channel some master from some other galaxy or something like that. But like I said, you don't have to believe what I believe. This is just for you to look at and for you to think about. I do appreciate your guys' questions. I love everyone. You guys have a great day. Take care, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.